Hi, it's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing and PR, the editor of Punchline magazine. Welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers, where each week I invite a panel of business experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's going on in their own individual business sectors and their own individual businesses, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. I've got a fantastic panel of guests. I'd like to introduce Ian Mean, Director of Business West, Sam Holliday from the Federation of Small Business, Peter White from the University of Gloucestershire, Clare from Tidal Training Direct, Adam Shearing from Hazlewoods Tax and Business Advisors. Thanks ever so much for joining us today. I'm going to quickly go to the newspapers and share the screen. There is only one major story today, and that is obviously the loss of our beloved Queen. We have in the Times, a life in service, the Daily Mail, our hearts are broken, the Daily Telegraph, grief is the price we pay for love. The Guardian, just very simply, Queen Elizabeth, 1926 to 2022. The Mirror, thank you. The Sun, we loved you, Mom. The Eye, Queen Elizabeth. The Daily Express, our beloved Queen is dead. The Daily Star, who for once actually have played it very, very safe. You did your duty, Mom. And I think that is a nice way to bring in the panel. Let's start with you, Sam. Welcome to Punchline Talks. So you've been reviewing the morning's newspapers. What's your overall view?
Well, I mean, this is the kind of morning that we all knew would happen one day, but in a funny kind of way, it's still a massive shock. And I think from yesterday afternoon, most of us were probably completely lost following the BBC's coverage. And then when it happened, like for the rest of you, I couldn't take my eyes off it. And overnight, I didn't sleep particularly well. I was catching up with what was going on. I went and got the papers this morning, and those front pages were all brilliant, and all the photos were incredible. And it's the tributes that are just startling. And Ian and I have both edited newspapers over the years, and it's quite difficult with a newspaper, really, because you're catching up. So what you want is the paper to be a kind of a paper of record that people will keep. And I got the Times, which is ultimately the paper of record, I believe. And it is fantastic. And I think it's one of those things where you're not going to read every word today because things are happening all the time, but you'll keep going back in, you'll dip into it. You'll keep this. I've still got papers of John Lennon and various other people that have died, and they are really important tributes, and the way that the papers are put together is fantastic. But funnily enough, as I was lifting this up to look at earlier, I saw the quote on the back and it absolutely floored me. The quote that the Queen made in 1957, which they chose to put on their back: "I cannot lead you into battle. I do not give you laws or administer justice, but I can give you something else. I can give you my heart and my devotion to these old islands and to all the peoples of our brotherhood of nations." That's a remarkable quote. On a day of remarkable quotes, I even heard Putin today praising the Queen, and I can't think of any other figure in the world that would unite people in the way she has. And I know people, we probably all do around this panel, that aren't monarchists. They will not say a bad word about the Queen. They just respect her duty, they respect her work ethic, and they respect that she's such a symbol of Britain. So it should have been a very different morning this morning. We should have been talking about the gas crisis, and we're going to talk about it later, a new Prime Minister. But I suspect everyone's woke up this morning and thought, did this really happen? And then they picked up the papers, they turned on the news and they found it did. So I think, as often happens, when something big happens, you realise the value of our press. And this is a brilliant paper, but so are them all. So yeah, very moved by what I've read, heard and seen so far.
Thank you very much, Sam. I'll go over to Ian, obviously ex-editor of the Citizen, Echo, Western Daily Press. Ian, they've had these lined up for quite some time, haven't they, these pages?
Yeah, they have. As an ex-Daily Mail man, I have to say, from about midday yesterday, I was thinking, we're in business here to do a major operation tomorrow. If you look at the Daily Mail, not because I work for it, it's just a brilliant paper journalistically. It carries something over 80 pages today. All the papers are brilliant, but the Mail is particularly good because what they have done very cleverly is get Sarah Vine, who used to be married to Michael Gove, their columnist, to write something which is very moving. And I'll just read you the intro. This is not, the Queen died yesterday. The intro says, "How to find the words. Our grief is 100 different emotions, all of them hard to grasp. And this is the sort of thing that Sam was talking about. And if you read her piece, it is absolutely brilliant writing. My favourite, though, front page is the Daily Mirror. I'll tell you why. Not because of the great picture by Lord Lichfield taken in 2002, but 2 words: thank you. Because we rarely thank the Queen, have we, over the years? When did we say thank you for all your work? So I thought that was good. The Daily Telegraph as well, an amazing quote there, rather like the quote that Sam's mentioned on the front page. There, grief is the price we pay for love. And I think that was great. The Telegraph 28-page supplement is just amazing pictures. Sam talked about the Times. Let's get to that now. What they've done brilliantly is actually do that almost like a front page obit in black and white. Brilliant. You may remember the old Independent when they used to do pictures in black and white. It was somehow more dramatic.
Haven't all the mastheads changed? They're all black and white today, actually, a sign of respect.
Yeah.
We're going to stop you there, Ian. We're going to move on to Peter for now. Thank you ever so much for that. Peter, obviously, you've been reviewing what's been said online as well. What's your take on the media side of things?
I mean, it's very hard to add to what has already been said. And, you know, coming back from holiday, as I've mentioned, and sort of walking into this yesterday, it was surreal. I've got to say, I was transfixed to the television. I wasn't sure what was going on to start with, quickly picked up what was going on, but so many things go through your head, don't they? I mean, you know, this is a woman who's, you know, she was 2 years before I was born. She came in, she was actually, went through a coronation. And she's a symbol of so many things to so many people. And, you know, just taking one aspect of that, which goes through my mind, is what she meant to the armed services. You know, one of her favourites, I think, events of the year was the November Remembrance Service at Cenotaph. And I know that, you know, the last couple of years, I think it's maybe 2 years, she's not been able to attend that, and Prince Charles has gone in her place. And but you know that she must have been devastated not to have been there. And actually, I think the military services, and you know, they would have been equally disappointed not to have seen her, but they would know that she was there in spirit, and she will always be there in spirit. And she's kind of one of the. There's not many people left now that have gone through the Second World War, gone through a world war, and played such an active part in it as she did. So, you know, my father went through the war. The Second World War, was involved in some of the major battles of the Second World War, like Dunkirk, the invasion, got wounded at Arnhem. And so, you know, my kind of connections with her very much through that kind of part of her life. And I know she was very attached to the military, as the rest of her family are. But again, she's one of she was one of a very few people left now that have experienced the World War, and that's what she stood for, in my view. So again, one aspect, but a very important one. You know, it's going to take very much, like Ian. When I think of Charles now, I'll keep saying Prince Charles. It's like when you go into the next year, into a new year, and you keep on saying, you know, keep on writing down the previous year on your letters. You know, it's going to take a while for this to sort of start to become real in my mind, and feel we have a King Charles III on the throne. It's a very strange feeling.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that, Peter. Great review. Obviously, being an ex-forces person myself, you actually swear allegiance to the Queen on the very first day before you go in, like all the sort of public services. Adam, welcome to Punchline Talks, first time on the show. Great to have you on there. What's your overview of the papers and the media today?
Well, I particularly enjoy reading some of the tributes that people have. You know, obviously, without wanting to offend too many people on this panel, I'm probably towards the younger end of the panel. So my experiences with the Queen are perhaps towards the latter end of her reign, but obviously, you know, 70 years is an awfully long time. And so many of the tributes kind of cover a broad range of experiences with the Queen. And I think one of my favourites was was actually Joe Biden, when he said that in a world of constant change, she was a source of comfort and pride for generations. And we talk about today about kind of these unprecedented times that we've been in, but actually throughout her reign, the Queen was in multiple unprecedented times. She was there during the Cold War. She was there in the aftermath of a Second World War. She went through COVID, multiple recessions. Throughout everything, she was a constant source of just reassurance, I think, for a nation. And Liz Truss yesterday, when she stood on the front of the Houses of Parliament, she referred to her as the rock upon which modern Britain was built. And I cannot think of any other figure that anything close to that could ever really be said. She's been just constantly there and constantly reassuring. The Radio 4 on the way into the office this morning talked about her history as a broadcaster. Talked about how when her first broadcast was at 14 years old, and she continued right the way through to the end. And famously with the COVID, and also with a special appearance with Paddington on her Jubilee, and has always been there for the nation. And I think that is something we can never truly measure, the impact that she's had on everyone's life, but also seemingly for all the people that have had the opportunity to meet her, also a very, very personal impact that they've had, and I think that's outstanding. And I cannot think of anything or anyone even close to be able to compare that to.
I don't think there'll be any chance of another monarch being able to stay as long as she has, as you can imagine. Thanks ever so much for that, Adam. Claire, let's bring you in. Welcome to Punchline Talks today. What's your take on what the papers and the media are saying, Claire?
Well, just to echo all the gentlemen's comments and the fact that Adam reflected quite well, we do, with the exception of Adam, who is younger than us, we do reflect a certain demographic, we do reflect a certain set of values, and we do live in a world where change is the only constant, and that has certainly been the case, over the last, over recent years. Looking at the Queen and looking at the sheer love and respect that the press are affording her, and rightly so, what the Queen gives us and always gave us is a sense of unity, is a sense of service and a sense of respect. Those traditional values that the monarchy and she gave us, and there's things that we take for granted in this society that not all countries have the benefit of. And she gave us that sense of permanence, that even through adverse times of change and uncertainty, and we've all been through them recently, that there is a sense of constance, and that is what she and the monarchy gives us. And I think there's a great solidarity in that. There's a great solidarity in being of service to other people, where it's easy, particularly in difficult times, and we'll no doubt discuss the socioeconomic impacts of where we are globally if we have time. There's always an opportunity to think about other people. There's always an opportunity to think about how we can be of service to others. And particularly when we're talking about politicians, it's not a bad thing to remember that, because there's always things we can do for other people. And she exemplified that. She was constant in her patience and her tolerance of so many things that went on. And she always shone an example of good behaviour, best practice, and how to lead through example. What an incredible woman. She will be terribly missed.
No, thank you. It's a very good tribute there, Claire. Thank you very much for that. Talking about people, and it's funny actually what Adam said about personal meeting people and things like this. And apparently she met 1/3 of the population of Great Britain. It was reported on the news today. But if I can, I'm just going to share my screen here, and there we go. Hopefully you can stop sharing. Can you see that, guys? No, hold on a second. I'm just going to try again. There we go. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Hopefully. Well, this was 9 years ago. Peter was there on the day, and so were you, Ian. In fact, you're on the left of the picture here. Actually, I got another shot with you here, and this is when the Queen opened Lost Coal. Pete, can you tell us a little bit about that day and how you remember it?
Yes, I can. I remember it starting. I was fascinated. The Secret Service came through the gates of the college in about 3 or 4 black Range Rovers, and it was so impressive. And these guys got out who you just wouldn't mess with. And we'd actually had visits to the college previously, of course. Dame Janet was around as well at the time. She was, and of course, Henry Elwes was Lord Lieutenant, and they gave some very good guidance. Yeah, we had visits by security. We had then the security staff from her security team on the roof. So it all starts off in a very exciting way, and everyone was very well organized. Greg Smith was principal at the time, and was responsible for moving the college from the centre of Gloucester, from Brunswick, to the Quays. And Ian played a huge role in that with Greg. And I think the college was actually the first, well, it was the first committed organisation to the Quays, and kicked off the regeneration. So, and actually it's been proved time and time again that education at the centre of regeneration is incredibly important. I mean, I can't remember the exact numbers now, but probably about 9,000 people a day were going in and out of the college, so going through the Quays and you know, and actually bringing it to life is so important. But on that day, the college had been open for a while. The Queen came up the river, and actually came off a boat, walked up through the Lantley Priory grounds into the back of the college, met a deputation, met Greg and various others, of course, yourselves, and then went on a tour. It was a tremendous day. She actually, interestingly, and I would just like to drop this in as well, if I might, we had a dinner for her and the Duke of Edinburgh later in the day, and we were fortunate enough to have the Apprentice of the Year, Sinead Smith, who had won the Apprentice of the Year nationally, and she sat next to the Duke of Edinburgh at the dinner, and she was absolutely transfixed by him. Yes, this was a very kind of modern young lady who had done tremendous work for the college, achieved tremendous things in her career, short career. And she was an absolute fan of the Duke of Edinburgh. He said some very funny things to her, which I could never repeat, but it was a tremendous day all round.
Oh, thanks ever so much, Peter. I'll bring you in here, Ian, because there you are. Can you all see Ian here in his stripy suit? I'd just like to say how I remember this day very quickly, if you don't mind. Ian was actually on as the picture shows on the left, on the right hand side. They come round the corner there. So what actually happened is we were expecting the Queen to arrive. Ian was actually standing to my left. He was actually going to be the first person to meet the Queen, and then he suddenly ran around the back of us and said he was going to go here. I don't remember this, Ian, but you were going to go there because you'd be able to see, and I think it's more about TV coverage. But anyway, anyway.
I can't remember that, Mark.
I'm sure. And then Antonia Shields, she actually was going to be first, and she was so nervous, she asked me if we would swap places. And so we swapped places, and that's how I ended up meeting the Queen first and being first in line, obviously representing the GHURC. It's a great honor. It's the first time I ever wore my medal, actually, as well, for Gulf War. Anyway, so moving on. Ian, how do you remember that day?
Well, it was a great day. I mean, as Peter said, she came up the canal on a boat, and I'll tell you sort of something quite funny. She said to Greg Smith, "What's that building over there?" And she pointed out to one of the derelict warehouses, and they quickly said, "Oh, well, that's sort of under development." But you know, she was absolutely amazing. And I've sort of met her 3 times. The first time was the Maundy Money service in Gloucester Cathedral. I think that was about 2002. And do you know what happened there? It was a lovely day. I had a picture taken, we had it framed, and before she went, we gave it to her. And I was then invited to something at Buckingham Palace on tourism. And I met her, and I was introduced, and she said, "Mr. Mean, wasn't that a lovely day in Gloucester?" Now, I'm told her recall by Sir Henry Elwes is absolutely brilliant. She is also, you know, very small, but her face I described as sort of porcelain. And lots of people say this, but her recall and knowledge is just brilliant.
No, thank you for that, Ian. No, it was a tremendous day. Sam, let's bring you in. We're gonna move on now, because the other big story, and this is why you were all invited on the panel originally, was to talk about the new Prime Minister. I mean,
it's extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, talk about a baptism of fire. And I will say this, I thought the very first speech she did when she got elected, I thought was dreadful. But during the course of the last couple of days, she's visibly grown. I thought the speech she did yesterday, the speech nobody wants to make, 2 days into a premiership, she's virtually announcing to the world the death of a monarch. I thought she did that very well. And of course, she just come on the back of what somebody on the BBC last night said might be a most important speech of her premiership. And that was about the energy prices, which should be the only thing we're talking about now, because as we all know, we're all involved in business one way or another. You know, our businesses are really, really hurting. And so to actually hear from her lips that, although there wasn't much detail, that businesses is on the agenda, because frankly, it hasn't been for the last few weeks, I don't think, was actually very encouraging. So yeah, it was a remarkable day. And I think it's almost impossible. She's probably she's on the last photograph the Queen ever took. And she stood there 2 days later and made that speech. And to be fair, I thought a lot of our politicians came out of it well yesterday. I thought Boris Johnson's speech was superb. I see Tony Blair spoke extremely well, as you would imagine. I saw John Major last night, who was very, very good. And very interesting with John Major. One of the questioners asked her about their private conversations. He refused to say. And I got the impression Prime Minister's always said, I think I read this in Tony Blair's autobiography, it's a 1 hour when you can say anything you like and know it won't be leaked. and I think that I respect that, really. So yes, I think she did. I think she's had a remarkable week, and I just hope it's not quite so dramatic for the rest of her premiership.
I think it's going to be the making of it, really. And you know, suddenly everyone will know who exactly she is and what she sort of stands for, maybe. Adam, let's go over to you, because obviously you work for business advisors there at Hazlewoods. Have you had a look at any of the detail, you know, for what's been offered for the business community? Because it's looking pretty dire, isn't it?
Yeah, so she's alluded to a number of things. Obviously, some detail is still forthcoming. I mean, some of the things she's immediately said she will do is she's going to reverse the national insurance increase that came in this April. The detail as to when that's going to be, presumably it won't be retrospective, but we don't have any details yet. She's also indicated that she is going to reverse the rise in corporation tax that was due to come in April. That was a 6% rise, so that's quite a significant potential for businesses. Again, we haven't yet got the detail that hasn't yet come in, so I think that should be relatively swiftly done. But of course, importantly, yesterday she announced the price cap, which is going to be affecting almost everybody in the country. The cap, although cap is sort of slightly in commas, is £2,500. So the average person. So the cap is not actually a ceiling in terms of what you'll pay. They're actually capping the price per unit that you'll pay. So when they say £2,500, that's what the average user would pay. So there'll be some people who will end up paying more than that, and some will end up paying less. So that's going to be set at £2,500, which is actually still double the price it was the previous year. But it is substantially less than the proposed cap that Ofgem were putting in at around sort of 3,700. I think I can't remember the exact number, but it was certainly slightly less than, substantially less than Ofgem. And importantly, it also is going to be extended to businesses, which the current price caps are not. The detail that we have is that it will only be for 6 months for businesses. So it'll be 2 years for households. In domestic use for businesses, it'll be 6 months. However, they have promised to review that in 3 months' time. So we will see how, you know, it's fantastic, it's great, but it's not been, well, the detail hasn't been released about how it's going to be funded, which is perhaps key. Well, so that is obviously the big controversy. You know, the national insurance increase was specifically to fund social care, and because it's, you know, that's been lacking for years. So there's no detail as to how that's going to be picked up or if it will then be picked up. We know it's going to cost a lot of money. A lot of money.
Okay, no, thank you ever so much. I'm going to go over to Claire now, because obviously, Claire, you run your own business.
Yes.
You must be seeing all the costs going up. You know, your staff, electric, gas. Have you had a look at the figures for your offices? Now, you're in a shared office, aren't you?
We are. As you know, Mark, we share offices with Evans Jones, and we've literally just moved offices. We've gone from the top floor to the middle floor for some more space. So we've been in a couple of months. So we're rapidly expanding. Anybody who is connected to the business arena, we all know that we have the core of fixed costs and an overlay of variable costs. So Adam, he'll be the first to tell us that we have to manage our fixed costs in our business, and everything else, well, that's the superfluous on top of that. But fortunately, we're very lucky to have a nice landlord, Mark. Mr. Jones, absolutely fantastic. But naturally, we're very nervous about energy costs. We're nervous about fuel costs. We're nervous about speaking frankly, we're nervous about the lack of investment in the business sector. And it's not a new concept, is it, gentlemen? We've been suffering for a long time as a nation of quite innovative people who thrive on enterprise and evolution. We don't really see that backing and that infrastructure that gives us the opportunity and the confidence to flourish. So I very much feel like some of the time we carry on regardless. And as you can probably tell, I'm an eternal optimist. And that goes a fair way into building infrastructure into our business and carrying on. So yeah, interested in what the gentlemen think as well.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that. Claire, Ian, I'm going to go over to you. Obviously, Business West, wearing that particular hat. What's your overall, if you don't mind keeping it tight, but what's your view on what the government has said so far, what they're offering business?
Well, I think first of all on Liz Truss, breath of fresh air. She seems pretty pragmatic. We've had Boris saying all sorts of things, F business and all sorts of things. Business needs a break here, and we welcome what appears to be a little bit of a new dawn. On energy, I agree with what Adam's saying. The issue with for business on energy is we don't really have that detail, and we need that. That is that's the key situation. Liz Truss, I think, has made a good start. Actually, she made a great speech yesterday. I also thought she demolished Labour in the Commons in her first Prime Minister's questions. So I think let's hope, and there's a lot of good things going on in Gloucestershire. We might well get the fusion bid, I hope, soon. I'm seeing it as a bit of a new dawn, as I say, for business.
Maybe, and not being funny about Boris, but maybe it's time for a grown-up politician. I don't know about you, but that she came in, she was very calm. It wasn't like Boris, frantic, running around all over the place. She's very well briefed. She responded really well. I think it might be something that we definitely need at this moment in time. Pete, very quickly, we go over to you. Your view on Liz Truss and what the government said. We'll have to keep it quite tight, though, please.
Yeah, of course. I echo again the views of the others. I think she's it's yet to be seen. I'd like some stability. I think stability is a key word now. For me, I think it's about recruitment is very important. It's about training the next, where are we going to get our staff from? Finding qualified staff is incredibly difficult. That's another thing which small and large businesses are grappling with, and colleges and universities too. Trying to find qualified people to teach is incredibly difficult to do when they're very rare in business and they're getting paid larger amounts. It's very difficult to attract them back into education. Apprenticeships and education and technical education is something I want to see on the agenda. She's talked about being a Prime Minister of Education. Yeah, I'd like to see that happen. Kim Malthouse has been appointed as the Secretary for Education, and someone I hadn't heard of, Kelly Tolhurst, has been appointed as Education Minister. So again, but Kim Malthouse is the 4th Secretary of State for Education in 4 months. So again, stability. We want stability now. We need to actually have some consistency, stability. Let's try and just keep things calm and drop and deal with some of these huge issues which are coming at us. But for me, education, training, finding staff, and trying to grapple with that, and that's not short-term. Not a short-term tactic, that's a long-term strategy. Well, I suppose it's both. It's got to be a priority.
Okay, thanks, Pete. We're going to go back over to you, Sam. Again, on the business side of things, do all members, what are they saying? What's your sort of feedback?
Well, I mean, clearly it's a bit too soon to see what they thought about yesterday's announcement, because obviously events took over, but they're having such a tough time. I'm sure we can all see that. I think everybody's explained why, because they're all in this classic dilemma, really, that their costs are going up, but they know that their own customers are having their costs going up. So you can't just keep laying costs. You can't keep increasing the price of the goods that you offer. And it's the same with staffing. You know, at the moment, everyone's struggling for staff, so they're having to pay more. And eventually, a little bit like the debt that we're going to incur because of COVID and because of what's happening with energy, it's got to be paid back. So it is a very, very tough time for businesses. In some ways, it feels almost worse than COVID, because COVID had a vaccine. This doesn't seem to have a vaccine. So yeah, it is a tough time, but I appreciate some of the comments that have been made by Ian and Peter about that necessity for a little bit of stability, and that 4 education secretaries in 4 months. I mean, that absolutely symbolises why, whatever your politics, we just need a period of calm now, because this is serious times, so we need serious politics, I think.
No, that's very well said. Thank you ever so much for that. I'm going to go now, move on to Punchline, this week's Punch, because we're running out of time. I'm going to bring you in, Adam. So what have you picked out in this week's Punchline, please?
So the article that I picked out, mostly because this morning I'm here in the offices, which meant a rather early start for me. And so I noticed on Punchline that there is a consultation out at the moment actually to improve the broadband infrastructure within Gloucestershire. £5 billion, £5 million, certainly a lot of money being put out, and it's being put out to the public to have their say in what they want, what they think. So it's a great opportunity for people, if they are like me, sat at home utterly frustrated that they're not able to have a decent, reliable connection, to get on, have your say, let your voice be heard, because you know, they are looking to invest, and we need to make sure they put it in the right place.
Adam, and I'd just like to add, David Purchase from On Toast was supposed to be here today, and the reason why he's not is because of his broadband connection was so bad, and he lives in the city centre. I mean, that says everything about our crap infrastructure. Ian, what's take your eye in this week's Punchline?
Well, you kindly promoted the England and Wales international transplant cricket match, which I'm very much involved in, on Sunday at Rockhampton Golf Club near Berkeley. Unfortunately, I don't know if this is now going to go ahead, but the interesting thing, this is a precursor to Organ Donation Week. I'm chair of the Gloucestershire Committee for Organ Donation, and also for 10 other trusts from here to the Isle of Wight. And all the team who are playing have had transplants. That's a unique situation. And Organ Donation Week, 19th to the 25th. If you haven't signed up to the Organ Donation Register, do it today. We've got one of the highest figures in the country, 470,000 people on the register from a population of 634,000. Yeah. It's the greatest gift you can give.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that, Ian. Claire, what have you picked out from this week's Punchline, please?
I'm just going to echo Ian's comments there. I absolutely concur with that. Please do sign. Just like to say well done to everybody involved for launching the successful opening of a £35 million school just down the road here in Cheltenham. So well done all, and here's to continuing and expanding education and investing in grassroots, because that's what we need to be doing, is investing in our future and investing in our younger generations.
Okay, thanks very much. Claire. Peter, what's yours?
I'd just like to congratulate Bobby Blewett, who's reached 50 years with the same company in Newent. You know, loyalty these days is a pretty rare thing. We don't respect it enough. And I think that is a tremendous human story, which at one time people used to sort of join an organization when they left school and retire from it. But now it just doesn't happen. So to see that, and also to loyalty has many different facets, doesn't it? I mean, customer loyalty, supplier loyalty, all those things doesn't seem to actually hold very much weight these days. So to see a story like this, particularly important. I mean, the absolute extreme of this is football managers, isn't it? That's
or education secretary.
Or
education secretary, absolutely, yeah. But to read a story like that in amongst everything that's going on, I just think it gives you hope.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, it was great. It was a great story, and it wasn't a press release, by the way. It was a proper Punchline story, and he didn't climb the corporate ladder. Boom, boom, if you know the story. Right, okay, Sam, what have you picked out your Punchline story, please?
Well, very quickly, I will just say that I can beat Bobby Blewett. My next door neighbour here in Orley Island, Gloucester, Edna, she worked for Debenhams for 63 years. I think it was a record. She went from 14 to 77. I'm sure Ian covered that in the Gloucester Citizen of old, but yeah, remarkable lady. Yeah, just a story I picked up, which kind of shows how the economy affects business in a very direct way. You did a story about hot tubs and how the demand has gone down, because in COVID, it was the sort of thing everyone aspired to, but people aren't using them so much anymore. But even more importantly, they can cost up to £100, was it a month to run? And now when you're worrying about energy bills and all that, they're the kind of things that go. So there's lots of businesses that rely on people using energy and using fuel, and they're going to be thinking twice about them. So a lot of businesses, and particularly in the hospitality sector, are going to be very worried by all the rises that are going on. And your hot tub story kind of encapsulated that. So yeah, that really picked out to me.
Thank you ever so much. Thank you to my fantastic panel for joining us today. I'd also like to thank Hazlewoods accountants and business advisors as well for being the sponsor of the show. Really important, as you can imagine. And thank you for everybody for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Punchline Talks. Bye.